some of the points that Elon Musk was making last week, that they were valid.
Literally, the UK bond market fired Liz Truss when she'd been in office for what, a month?
I wonder if the academic view that tariffs have to cause inflation is factually correct in terms of what people are saying.
If we see a growth slowdown, that would naturally bring inflation down because people wouldn't be spending so much.
And he went to a freaking record store and spent $500 on music, and he never paid it. He never intended to pay it.
I think that in 5 years, we're going to see a technological shift that's probably the same level as the last 30 years.
That people just have this desire to get out there, to travel, to spend. COVID was devastating for a lot of people.
So of course somebody's going to go, I'm going to take full leverage on crude oil and hope I'm right.
There's a difference between you and I getting a $500,000 credit line so we don't have to think about where the 15 grand to go to Italy is.
What happens if our relationship with China deteriorates further?
Welcome to The Future's Edge. I am Jim Urio. That's Bob Iacino. That is Ali Canal, senior markets reporter for Yahoo Finance. We are so glad to have with us. First of all, before we start, a couple things. All the support we've been getting on this is amazing. The DMs, the retweets, you guys are the best. Thanks to our funnest sponsor. Oh, by the way, Bob, I got to tell you about the last shipment I got from Independence Arc Farms.
Yeah,
Independent.
I just got it too.
Oh, it was amazing. By the way, like 2 of the steaks thawed when he delivered it on Friday because I couldn't get it off the front porch. So that means I had to cook up these 2 gigantic steaks and just eat steak all weekend long. It was literally one of the best weekends I've had in a long time. And my dogs are smiling. But anyway, I don't even think I finished the pitch. Independence Arc Farms. We always complain about how big conglomerates are poisoning our food source. We can do something about it. We can patronize small independent farms. Thank you. Ali, dogs or cats, mountains or beaches? Tell us about yourself.
Tell you guys about myself. Loaded question there, but yes, I will say dogs over cats, although I do not currently have one. I travel too much. I'm too busy. You know what? I don't really want, I never grew up with a dog. My brother has a dog. I'm very down to be the dog auntie. I don't know if I want to be the dog mommy. I would be too upset every time I had to leave the poor thing. So there's that. I live in New York City. So that's really exciting. Love the city. I love the energy here. And then definitely beaches. I grew up going to Ocean City, New Jersey. You could probably hear the slight Philly twang in my accent a little bit. I always get made fun of at the office. It's only when I say Ocean City. For some reason, I can't stop saying that, but it's the best place in the world.
Water.
I say water, but my entire family says water. I don't know what it was.
It's so
I don't know what it was about me. I think because I was an English girl, I knew the spelling of water. Water is Wouder. So I was very determined to get that right.
Makes no sense. Speaking of the dogs thing, we just adopted another dog. Now, I started rescuing dogs because they were free, not because I was any sort of good person. But I'm getting a shit ton of credit for now. We adopted a dog with heartworm that needs to be on bed rest for 2 months. So I've been getting a lot of credit. I want people to understand that we're going to stick with it and we're going to make the dog into a good dog. But I started into it for all the wrong reasons. I don't want anyone to think I'm magnanimous and wonderful. Bobby, what do you got?
How do you get a dog on bed rest? Like, how do you do that?
I don't know. We're just going to keep it.
I know you're not magnanimous, but how do you do this?
Hold it. Is magnanimous the right word? Did I just pull out a word that's not right? Oh, remember, we have a guest. We have a guest here too.
Well, I love that. My girlfriend just bought a dog and rescued a dog, and she's obsessed with her. Her name's Olive.
Oh, fantastic.
She's adorable.
Yeah.
Jimmy just came back from Italy a few weeks ago, and my wife and I were supposed to go next. And then we had some friends that live down here in Florida near us put their dog to sleep. And now my wife doesn't want to leave the dog. I'm like, she might live another 6-7 years.
That's why I don't want a dog. I don't want to be confined to my tiny apartment. I need to feel okay leaving it. And if I had a dog, I just wouldn't. I know myself.
Yeah.
Says, now the first question that you get here, because I'm amazed by the length of the news cycle right away.
Yes.
In Thursday, the world was ending. Tesla lost 150 billion of market cap. Billion with a B. I almost like it sounded wrong saying it.
It's crazy. Yeah, when I was writing that story, I checked it a zillion times because I wanted to make sure that I had it right.
Perplexity. Is it really? Okay, but anyway. So, but then by Friday, we basically forget. By Saturday, I'm on with Kudlow. He's like, would you buy Tesla? I'm like, Hell yeah, I'd buy Tesla. We have memory of a gnat around here. What are your comments on, is the news cycle getting shorter, or is this me getting crabbier and older? What is the whole thing?
Yeah, it seems like the markets are just constantly trading on headlines here. I think you can feel that in some of the soft data that we've been getting, right? A lot of the soft sentiment data, those survey readings, they were really bleak and really negative for a long time, pretty much in the aftermath of the Trump Liberation Day tariff announcements. Now that we've gotten some more positive news, the soft data is turning a little more optimistic. So it just goes to show that people are still kind of looking at these day-to-day headlines. I was just on our markets blog today, and the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ were not too far off from those record highs, which is just astounding considering where we were in April. And a lot of the economists and strategists that I've been speaking with say that that is the craziest thing, that we saw stocks go way, way down and come up in such a crazy fashion, that V-shaped recovery, that for a minute there, a lot of people were very bleak on Wall Street. And then we had strategists, analysts chasing their price targets. Now all of a sudden, we're optimistic about the growth forecast. We're optimistic about the end of year S&P 500. We're not quite where we were pre-Liberation Day, but it's certainly trending that direction. I think it just goes to show how quickly things can change, especially with this administration. And as someone who was in the media world during the first Trump administration, then with Biden, now with Trump 2.0, it is crazy to see the difference between what we've been getting today versus what we got at the end of last year with Biden. And that's been the biggest thing that I've certainly noticed over the past few months.
How did you guys handle it behind the scenes? Obviously, to me, one of the biggest, how do I word this? The Jake Tapper book, I thought was a joke. I think that's a complete joke. I mean, Jake Tapper went on rampages defending the mental clarity and the mental health of Joe Biden. And you don't know this, Jimmy knows this, I've mentioned it a million times, trying to be magnanimous, if that's the right word.
Yeah,
my father had Parkinson's, and I actually moved home to take care of him for the last 18 months of his life, myself and my mother. And every time over, I'd say maybe the second half of President Biden's term, I recognized things like the way that he would talk, the way that he would kind of look, the way that he would act. And I said, God, this just looks exactly like my dad. And I started to feel bad for him. So you guys obviously have to be neutral. I don't know how neutral you have to be on this show. When you see something like the Tapper book, did you just kind of go like, what the fuck, Jake? I mean, that's kind of bullshit. Or did you look at it and go, well, maybe he didn't know?
It's something I've been reflecting a lot on as a journalist, especially within this very turbulent time. Obviously, politics right now, it is so divisive. You have different media outlets out there. Some are more catered to the liberal side. Some are more Republican side. You have the whole MAGA component. And for me, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. I get hate from both sides of the aisle here. And what I always try, by the way. Yeah, I always try and root my reporting, my stories in numbers, in data, especially at Yahoo Finance in particular. Our main mission is to cater to the everyday investor, particularly the retail investor, and help them build their wealth. So the stock market, what's going on there, or corporate earnings, that's sort of our guiding light. So we didn't wade too much into politics. Now, that being said, I don't think you can avoid talking about politics when you talk about business and the stock market. And certainly after Trump was elected, you saw a lot of optimism on Wall Street about some of those pro-business policies, deregulation, tax cuts for individuals, corporations. And it's interesting because right now the conversation has been dominated by the tariff picture, but we also potentially have deregulation and some of those tax cuts coming down the pipeline. And whether or not that will be enough to offset some of the quote unquote damage that's been done on the tariff side remains to be seen. But I do think there are a lot of lessons learned that we can take from how the media in general handled Biden's decline. And I think the thing I always go back to is that the American people, we're not stupid, right? I mean, you could literally see on your screen, you could hear different things that he was saying that just didn't quite make sense. And so to me, the book was this kind of like weird full circle moment of, okay, maybe we all need to take a step back. And the results of the election, I think, also speak to the fact that people are kind of sick of being told one thing, but then seeing something else. And you can look at that with the inflation story too, right? I mean, the Biden administration sort of campaigned on this idea that inflation was heading in the right direction, but yet you couldn't go to the grocery store and see egg prices any higher. So I do think there is this push pull as a journalist, as a reporter. I want to report the facts. I want to report things right. But right now it's just so divided that it's hard not to get lost in the sauce, lost in the minutia, lost in this kind of cycle of, I don't even know what the right word is. I want to say hatred. I don't know if that's a little too intense, but it does feel like every side is just attacking each other, no matter what is said, what is done. And like I said earlier, I mean, I get hate from really everyone right now, especially because it is just so polarizing, no matter what you say or do.
Yeah, we get the same thing. They call us MAGA. We're not. Mm-hmm. They call, they yell at us and say, you're not supporting Trump. No, I mean, he's spending too much in the bill, for example, and Jim and I have both railed against that.
Yeah, I get called a liberal hack. I get called, a Trumper MAGA, and it's just one of those things where I want to it's hard not to focus on political party lines, right? But I just want to be, and you guys spoke with an amazing journalist recently, and he kept saying, I don't know who that serves, them knowing my political affiliation.
Yeah.
And he kept
Who was that, Bobby?
John Ehrlichman.
Oh yeah, he was great. Okay, but anyway, sorry.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I want to ask questions and get the interesting answers from that. I think that is the core of why I went into this field, just sheer curiosity. And that's questions from both sides of the political aisle and everyone involved. And how can I take everything that I've learned, all the sourcing, all the reporting, and give that in the form of a written article or a presentation on camera that someone who's watching can make a better decision for their portfolio or a better business decision. A CEO needs to make a choice on whether or not to lay off someone or maybe take a step back. And I think that is where business journalists and this career in this field in particular, that's where this comes into play. And it's so important right now, especially at a time where there's a lot of confusion and people are looking to see what they could do to really improve their individual businesses and their individual portfolios and therefore their lives.
Okay, I want to take two things that each of you guys said and ask questions. Before I do, I want to mention, thank you guys for supporting us on the newsletter. I mentioned it a second ago. Mm-hmm. The growth on that and the feedback we're getting is great. You can get it at theunfilteredinvestor.com. or on the Slice app. We prefer you go to theunfilteredinvestor.com, and thank you for that. You mentioned deficits a second ago, Bobby. So you talk to a lot of really, really smart people, Allie. They come on your show, and you talk to the crowd in general. I'm sure you get a lot of mail. I said some of it's hate mail. Okay, deficits and debt were a big, huge voting issue within the financial community. Now, I'm in an echo chamber because I'm in the financial community. I think it was an enormous deal. Do you think if you take a 30,000-foot viewpoint on that and say, did the people really vote on that? Or was that just something that us finance bond geeks were looking at?
I think that was shocking to a lot of folks, including those who voted Trump into office. It's not, and I speak to friends who are more right-leaning, and they've admitted that, some of the points that Elon Musk was making last week, that they were valid. It doesn't really align with some of the campaign promises and pledges that Trump ran on. Amen. And I think that's being reflected in what you're seeing in the bond market, how long-term yields, 10-year yields, 30-year yields. I mean, this is unprecedented stuff here, and it's going to have longer term ramifications. It's also interesting to see how closely the Trump administration is watching the bond market. And really, that was one of the reasons why Trump blinked on those reciprocal tariffs. I think it will be one of the reasons that he maybe changes up this deficit bill if we get that significant move higher. And speaking to a lot of strategists out there too, they tell me that is the one thing that's going to maybe send stocks down again. And I think at this point, a lot of investors have been desensitized to a lot of the tariff headlines. And it seems that the general vibe is positive. But if we see a significant move to the upside on these yields, if the bond vigilantes come back out, and if a lot of that is due to deficit concerns, that's going to have a ramification and ripple effect on the equity side as well. So just as easily as we've sort of been in this roller coaster moment, I think it could definitely come down again. And bonds and what we see there is a main catalyst for that.
Just to add on to that, Jim Bianco reminded us the other day that James Carville had a quote about when he comes back in another life, he wants to be the bond market because everybody's scared to death of the bond market. Literally, the UK bond market fired Liz Truss when she'd been in office for a month. But we are not seeing yields scream higher. And I want to add one thing to you and have you comment as well, because you said right-leaning friends, and then you were talking about they sided with Musk over Trump. Don't you think that Trump's viewpoint was the more Musk's viewpoint was the more right leaning in that particular, as far as cutting deficits, cutting spendings, than Trump was. So who's right wing in that discussion?
Yeah, look, I mean, if you go back, I always think the Republican is small government, right? And so the deficit stuff.
By the way, Republicans talk about small government. Talking about it is not the same as Institute. And by the way, that Josh Hawley clown today talked about raising the national minimum wage. I'm not even talking about that as a policy. I'm talking about you calling yourself a conservative and then want to price fix wages. Sorry, I interrupted you, Ellie. Please go.
No, yeah, but that's always been growing up, right? Is you think that it's small government. And I feel like policies and party lines have changed over the years. And I've always been very frustrated that we have, this really staunch two-party system, because at this day and age, I don't think someone's 100% Republican or 100% Democrat. I really think there's this blurred gray area, and Musk alluded to that, right? This third party of some sort. Realistically, I don't know how that would work, if it would even be a possibility, but it's something that I've consistently thought about, because I don't 100% agree with either side of the bucket there. So I think on the deficit stuff, they're saying that tariffs are going to offset some of this cost, but then what happens if that filters through into inflation? And what if we see another inflation resurgence? And to me, one of the reasons why Trump got elected is because folks were sick of higher prices and they wanted inflation to come down. So if we see this significant uptick, what does that mean for the future? I know the Trump administration has said short-term gain, longer term pain, but what is the threshold there? I think that is the big question. How long can we sustain the short-term pain before the longer term gain is no longer possible?
This is going to be a weird question, Allie.
I love weird questions.
Yeah, this is a weird question. Are you able to sense I've known you for quite a while now. Yeah, a long time. I mean, I don't know you personally, but we've communicated a lot, and you've always seemed to me to be an honest, like you lead with honesty. You're kind of an honest, forward person. I hear talking of books a lot in the tariffs, because like if you go back to 2017, and granted they were not as expansive as they are now, there was no sustained inflation. There was a brief uptick in steel prices with the steel tariffs, and then that actually slowly ebbed lower. And we're seeing Walmart say that they're going to raise prices, and then they get threatened by the administration, and now there's some backpedaling of that. And I wonder if the academic view that tariffs have to cause inflation is factually correct. In terms of what people are saying, it seems to me that we hear inflation from the people who run companies whose stocks might not have as strong of an earnings base if the tariffs were to stay at the current levels. The second part of that question is, if that's the case, then we'll also get an economic slowdown, which may actually curb inflation on its own. So I'm wondering if you're able to sense with some people that they don't really think that. But this is what I have to report because that's what they said.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I think that is probably the biggest question, though, right? Are tariffs going to be a one-time price increase, or is it going to be more sustained over time? And you mentioned Walmart, and I thought that was an interesting development to see one of the biggest corporations say that they were going to have to raise prices. I do think more companies will actually end up absorbing a lot of these costs. And you mentioned that if we see a growth slowdown, that would naturally bring inflation down because people wouldn't be spending so much. And we talk a lot about the downside risks. I think the upside risks are actually a little bit more interesting. What if the consumer does remain resilient? You think about 2022, right? 2 negative quarters of GDP, stocks were down. Everyone thought we were in a recession, but we never were in a recession. Why? Because the consumer remained incredibly resilient. It was also a weird, wonky time post-COVID. There were stimulus checks. People were going out there. There was revenge travel. They wanted to be spending. And today, even though people are saying that they want to pull back on spending, are they? We haven't fully seen that yet. People are still going out there and they're still purchasing things. The labor market is still very strong. That's a huge part of the equation that I think if we were to see that deteriorate, I think then that's where you could see these growth projections really go to the downside. But so far, there's been little cracks underneath the surface when you look at jobless claims, things like that. But the unemployment rate has been steady. Companies are very afraid to fire workers. I think that is another key takeaway here is they know how hard it is to hire those workers back. I think everyone would rather be in wait and see mode at this point before panicking, because we've learned from the past, right? We've learned in 2022 that sometimes what is on the surface might not actually be the reality. And it's like if you're an investor and you sold stocks at the low in April, you would have missed out on this rally of gains, right? So sometimes it pays to just wait and be patient. We're seeing that on the Fed side. We're seeing that on the corporate side. And I think it's a lesson to be drawn from the individual investor side too.
I have a question to both of you, actually, because you guys mentioned something, the consumer. So Bobby and I have long been in the camp that from 2020 on, it was absolutely a K-shaped recovery. I think that wealth was transferred to the upper 20% at an alarming rate, in my opinion. But anyway, so now if you look at what's happening right now, just Spain, I believe, posted the 2 biggest weeks of tourism since they've been keeping records. When I was in Italy, anywhere in Rome, and granted there was some Pope stuff going on too, so let's go to Florence then. Anywhere in Florence, going anywhere during the day was like leaving a rock concert. I mean, it was so incredibly packed. Do you think there's been a fundamental shift? Again, there's no experts on this question too. This is just a question for everybody's opinion. Has there been a fundamental shift in mentality after 2020 that people are more live for today? And there's some little bit of things that back that up. You know, the savings rate has gone down. Credit card balances have gone through the roof, and borrowing at 25%, mind you, too. Do you think there's been a fundamental shift in the way people think and spend? It's like, screw it, I'm having fun today. Allie first.
I think so. I just got back from a trip to south of France and Greece. And
did you finance it on your credit card though? No.
So yeah. Well, and it is also funny because my brother, he works at a sales company and he won this President's Club trip. So I was his +1 to go to Greece. So I got my flights comped and everything. Yeah, I still definitely spent while I was over there. And I do think that people just have this desire to get out there, to travel, to spend. COVID was devastating for a lot of people. I think people lost loved ones, people lost friends, people were trapped inside their homes for a long time. And I don't think it was expected. It was a scary, weird time. And I think you can think, oh, it was a long time ago, but it really wasn't. It feels to me, and I always say this to my friends, I don't really remember much pre-COVID. I don't remember my New York City life pre-COVID. It's sort of, I just remember things that happened post 2020. And we lost some formative years. I mean, when COVID happened, I was right around 26, 27. Those are years where, you start to make real decisions on your life, on your relationships, and where you want to go, where you want to be. And COVID ended, and all of a sudden I was almost 30 in the same place I was at 26. So I think it was a big reflective moment. And for a lot of folks out there that maybe were waiting to travel or waiting to get back out there and accomplish their dreams, the things they wanted to do, I think it was a wake-up call.
Bobby?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot, actually. And that sort of FOMO life that's kind of come up, this fear of missing out. I remember Chris Rock one time said, those people that say YOLO, you only live once, life is short. Chris Rock's punchline to that was, for most people, life's excruciatingly long. And I worry actually about the future of it. When you look at consumer revolving debt, it actually looks like it's turning lower. It's at a record high, but it's always at a record high. It's similar to inflation, where it continues to rise, basically, except for blips during recessions, and that's it. It just continues to rise over time. You're not going to see, in my view, people living without debt ever again, including myself, by the way, for reference sake. When I look at people now, I remember being in college, a friend of mine got a credit card in the mail for $500, and he looked at me and goes, yeah, they just gave me this. All I got to do is call in and it's active. I go, well, what does that mean to you? He goes, free records. And he went to a freaking record store and spent $500 on music, and he never paid it. He never intended to pay it. So there's this weird thing going on where financial literacy is probably, to me, the most important thing that's not being taught out there. And I'm a broken record. I'm not the only one saying it, obviously. But I think that is the case, Jim. I think people are going to be like, you know what? We might get hit by another pandemic. I'm going out. We might get hit by another pandemic. I'm going to France. I'm going to Italy. I'm going to the Bahamas. Doesn't matter. I think they will definitely do that.
But that's not, like you mentioned, You mentioned you taking on more debt. And again, my wife and I just had to sit down to it. There's a difference between you and I getting a $500,000 credit line so we don't have to think about, where the 15 grand to go to Italy is, than borrowing money that you don't collateralize. That's a big difference.
My debt is secured.
You have secured debt. Yeah. So I think that's a big difference. Allie, do you have anything to add to this, or should we move on to the next topic?
Well, you mentioned how financial literacy is really important. I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on the TikTok, Instagram, influencer, however you want to say it, whether that's improving things right now, or if you think that it's actually making things worse because there potentially could be more misinformation out there.
I was just thinking how we would answer that. I should put my old man glasses on, like, you kids in your TikTok. No, I do.
I'll take that if you want.
You take it. I got some stuff for it too, but you go. Yeah.
I think that's to a certain degree, it's the fault of institutions for not ever taking the mantle on this. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing overall, but I think on balance, most kids don't have the background knowledge to know if what they're being taught is right. One of the places I see it the most is in this sort of active investor community. Jim and I both do work for the CME. I just did a trading challenge for them where it was trade against the pro and I was the pro. And I mean, these guys were just like, there were people that had doubled the money in 5 days. And I had to not say that's not real life, guys, because it's not real money. It's not your money. And there was a material prize at the end of the challenge. So of course, somebody's going to go, I'm going to take full leverage on crude oil and hope I'm right. And those are the people that doubled their money. So when you look at it from that perspective, you even have institutions that are out there saying, you know what, we need engagement. Even an institution like the CME Group is coming out with smaller and smaller contracts and zero DTE options in order to satisfy this sort of TikTok craving for trading. Hate it, but I don't think I'm going to be able to combat it. I'm certainly not on TikTok, so I'm not doing that. Say what I say about crypto all the time. Crypto needs an adult in the room. I think it's a viable asset, but they need an adult in the room, and it's probably not me, because I'm more of a holder of gold than anything else. But they need an adult in the room. They need somebody in there to go, yeah, it can go to zero. It is possible. Right. Lehman Brothers went to zero. Bear Stearns went to zero. Countrywide went to zero. And things, when you were in frickin' crawling around on your hands and knees, a toddler, that went to zero that Jim and I saw. So it bothers me. It bothers me a little bit, but it does make them at least aware. And something Jimmy said a while back about the zero DTEs. Maybe it's going to teach them a lesson early, and maybe that's a good thing.
So, and I have, by the way, with Allie here, she's actually a professional journalist. I like her questions better than our questions. We should have just flipped this whole reversed the entire time, by the way.
I'm sorry. I had to ask.
But anyway, it was a great question. So I think what I've seen in our lifetime, and certain things are great about being able to look back at all of it too, is social media, the outlets that you mentioned. One thing that they reinforce every day is that everybody's living a better life than you are. Now, whether or not that's true or not is absurd, obviously, because it's probably usually not. Everyone posts their highs, nobody posts their lows. But I think it has created a mentality that you need to do things to catch up and live this fulfilling, happy life that everyone else is living. And most of that involves spending money. Other parts of it involves, well, I got to trade crypto. Everybody's making a shit ton of crypto. Everybody's a trader. And Bobby and I, you should see when we go into these retail things, Allie, and we are like so risk mitigators compared to we're going to just make all this money. Hold your horses there, cowboy. Let's talk about not losing your money first. That should be number one, is putting the minimum at risk for the maximum gain, defining your risk, shit like that. But I think the mentality has changed. We always, in the past when we were kids, you always had somebody in your circle who thought they were missing out on something. They were going to try all these crazy new things. But now there's more people to that. How does that sound, Allie? Does that sound reasonable?
That sounds reasonable, especially because my younger brother, my little cousins, they have been obsessed with the stock market from a young age. And it feels like it was a lot younger than when I was their age. And maybe it's a difference of interests or a guy thing versus a girl thing. I don't really know. But to me, it's been fascinating to see how much they are very much like that. They're like, I'm going to make a lot of money. Like, I'm investing in stocks. Like,
by the way, you said a guy thing versus a girl thing. You really do have an opinion on that, right? Because statistically, gambling site, it's literally 95% male versus 5% who have gambling addiction. So you do have an opinion on that, correct? Yeah.
I do have an opinion on that, especially being a woman in this field. I mean, I started my career at People magazine. So I wanted to talk about the Kardashians. I wanted entertainment. Like I had no interest in stocks or business. You know, it was always something I was curious about, of course, but it wasn't what I wanted to do for my career. I was at People for about 2.5 years. This opportunity for a producer position opened up at Yahoo Finance. And I figured, okay, I'm curious about this enough. The interviews were intriguing. I had a good gut feeling about it. I figured it would be a challenge. Let's do this and see what happens. And I fell in love with it. And I just find it so interesting. Everything is changing constantly. It's a smarter way to talk about everything going on in the world. You could argue that every single story out there is a business story at its core. And I've just been grateful to have really stumbled into this career where I'm continuing to learn and grow. But I think if I never took that leap and I wasn't exposed to this, I'm not sure if I would have really latched on the way that I did. So
by the way, I didn't even know I still had a house phone. That ringing in the background. I'm surprised as anybody that the phone's ringing in my house. I didn't even know he had one. Anyway, sorry to cut you off.
You got to put the dad glasses on again.
Exactly. I think it's the phone, honey.
I'll tell you, I have to compliment Yahoo because one of the things that I always, Jim and I were both contributors to the TMZ of financial media that Jim doesn't like to mention, but it's stupid ass CNBC.
There might be a time I'm in a legal battle with them, but anyway, go on.
Yeah, they're terrible. They're awful. And one of the things I used to always say is that the people who understand what we're saying on these interviews aren't listening to us. And the people who don't understand what we're saying on these interviews are the ones trying to glean something from it. And that drove me crazy. One of the things I always liked about going on Yahoo, and I only do Yahoo. Actually, that's probably all I do now, because I used to do Fox with Neil Cavuto, but Neil's gone and I don't do anyone else on Fox. That may change because I like Larry, but Yahoo's one of the only ones I still go on because you get to actually talk. You get anywhere from 6 to 11, sometimes 12 minutes to put your actual full thesis out there, which makes them a lot more of a responsible watch for people who are actually trying to understand what's happening in that given day. I used to go on with Brad Smith before he joined you guys. And these longer format interviews, I even got to talk about The Bachelor for a while on there. So it seemed like I was a people reader, but I wasn't. Yeah, some of the people on there, Shayna Smith, I mean, these guys, they're just great people on that network. I love going on there. It's just a completely different vibe. They never want me to change my black t-shirt. They never asked me to. I was in the studio once, Jimmy, in a black t-shirt in Yahoo.
Really?
I don't remember if you were the producer.
Well, we're digital, right? I might have been getting in your ear sometimes.
Yeah, I just remember saying to somebody, "Shit, I remember saying to somebody, "Shit, I forgot a collared shirt." They're like, "We're Yahoo, just come in. We don't care."
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do love the fact that I think there's something to be said. Digital brand, young, fresh. I've been here a long time, almost 7 years, and the place is constantly iterating, changing, trying to adapt to the times, and the people really is what's made me want to stay. Like you were just talking about a couple of our anchors, Brad Smith, Shauna Smith. Everyone here is so smart, and they want to keep learning and they want to keep growing. And at the end of the day, we just want to have really smart people on our shows and ask smart questions so that we're able to provide that context.
I also don't want to leave.
To me, that's it. It's all about context, right? It's not, you can go on your phone and read whatever happened on X day. Yeah. But if you don't have the context, and that's why I don't think our jobs are going to fully be replaced by AI, fingers crossed, because AI, I don't think can always deliver the context in the way that you need as a reader to really get something out of it.
I didn't mean to leave Julie Hyman out of there because that's probably...
Of course, Julie, yes.
Probably how I got on Yahoo in the first place, because she used to interview me.
Well, what's the guy's name with the beard who used to be on CNBC with me? Josh Lipton, right? Yeah, I forgot his name. Sorry about that.
Look at Josh Lipton
I think Josh is very good. I'm sorry about that. Shit, I just had.
Jimmy, was Josh the guy who had? No, he wasn't. There was a guy from CNBC that had a pretty embarrassing CME trading floor clip years and years and years ago. You remember that
one with the dick?
Yeah, with the dick on his back.
Funny. Who put the dick on my back? Yeah, right. That was hysterical.
I don't know
who it was, but I thought his reaction to it was perfect. He goes, "It was kind of a prank on the trading floor." If you ever, what does he say? Because that's how you can search it on Yahoo.
So when we were on the trading floor, we had these trading cards, right? And I've still got stacks of them. All right. So when it got quiet, guys would rip them into the shape of a shark fin, right? Just sort of, I'm doing it too fast, but it's sort of like this. And then they would bend it and they would clip it to the back of a guy's trading coat when he wasn't looking. And then as he walked by, especially if it was somebody who hadn't been there long, the whole floor would just start yelling, "Shark, shark." And the guy wouldn't know it.
I know you're thinking this is infantile, but this is how we pass the time.
Well,
Stop it.
I was at the Nicey recently. It's very tame. Nicey's very tame. It is not like that at all. So, you know, I got to make a trip to the CME.
So then that converted to guys tearing these into the form of male we already said dick, in the form of a dick.
We can't unsay it.
Yeah, I can't. We're live. And then they stuck it to this. So I don't remember who it was. I wish I remembered his name, but he was on the floor reporting from the CME. And somebody walked by with one of those things on his back. And then he turned around and deliberately said behind him in a microphone, he pulled it out. He goes, "Who put this dick on my back?" In like the thickest Chicago accent you ever heard. It's on YouTube.
You got to go look
dig into the archives for that one.
You guys handle that. I mean, obviously these live spots, you guys have got, you do, you know, the sort of reporter on the street stuff. Have you ever done that? Has anything ever happened to you like that?
I'm sure it has. I think with live, you have to just roll with it, right? And you can't get too hung up on any one mistake. I mean, this show literally goes on. You could do it the next day. I always try and write down things, keep a mental note to try and better myself. I watch myself back as much as I can, which can be pretty cringy at times, but I think that's the only way you can really get better is by just, you know, keeping track of things, watch yourself, see what you do right, see what you don't like, and kind of go from there.
I just thought of a sequence when I was on with Joe Kernan. And when Rick Santelli I would usually be the guest and be asked, but when Rick Santelli would go on vacation, I would often break the numbers. And you'd be in a different spot because you have to see them all come out on the board and see all the markets. Well, the producers at the CME didn't know that, or there was something. So they sit me in front of the camera where the guest sits. And I'm hearing Joe. It was almost a panic in my mind. He goes, "And here's Jim Urio to break down the numbers for us. What is this CPI coming out of, Jim?" And I'm like, I was just about to ask you the same thing, Joe. I have no idea.
The breaking news hits are hard, and tomorrow is CPI day.
I hate breaking news.
And especially if things don't load. Sometimes I don't trust technology all the time.
And they're like, we're waiting for the numbers.
And you just have to tap dance, right? And have some backup things to do. I think it's helpful if you like the people you're on set with, if you can joke around, if you know them, if you're 100%. Comfortable with them, because that makes it a little more digestible and easy. But before you really start getting into the nitty gritty of the numbers.
Speaking of nitty-gritty,
you've reported on this stuff. So I wonder if you have a personal opinion. If not, what have people been saying to you? The whole media sort of universe, whether it's something like Disney, Paramount, legacy media versus web media that you just kind of talked about, digital media. What's your opinion of that whole universe? Because I bought Disney early when they first started the streaming service. Because I'm a huge Marvel fan. I was a massive Marvel fan. I never missed a Marvel movie. I had comic books when I was a kid. I still have them now. But what's your opinion on all of that between what Disney is doing? Disney's earnings still seem to be coming from theme parks, but we saw a little bit of an uptick in their earnings from streaming. So what are you seeing there?
I think it'll be really telling once the ESPN direct-to-consumer platform hits the market. We know the cost of that at this point. We know roughly the target demo, how that potentially offsets any of those linear declines. And that's really across all of legacy media. That's what they're trying to circumvent, these legacy declines when it comes to people sitting on their couch, turning on the TV. People are just not subscribing to television anymore. They're going to the streaming platforms, and Netflix was the leader there, and they certainly have that first mover advantage. Everyone seems to follow the leader when it comes to Netflix's position, and rightfully so. And even with advertising, which they said they were never going to do, they did that. And now Wall Street is so gung-ho about the ad business there. And it's been pretty astonishing to see the rise in the stock price. I don't remember what it is currently, but I know it's well over $1,000 a share. Wonder if they're going to engage in a stock split anytime soon. But I think it just proves that the industry is changing, it's evolving. And really, this is something we've seen time and time again. Media in general has always experienced mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, and it just keeps going on. So I think it's just a sign of the times of how quickly things can change, consumer behavior patterns change. And if you want to survive within this world, within this new media world, you need to be able to adapt. And those that are able to adapt quickly are the winners. and those that take their time and they're not sure and they have messy plans, they're going to be the losers here. So that's what I look at across the board. But you mentioned Disney specifically. Yeah, for them, the parks is probably their biggest driver. And more recently, the cruise ships. I got a chance to tour one of their cruise ships. I mean, these are massive endeavors. They are selling out. I can see the appeal. If I had a family, I'd probably take my family on a Disney cruise ship. But so I do think that is another big lever for Disney to pull. A company like Netflix that is solely streaming, they don't have those levers. So in a way, they're a lot more exposed, but they are also insulated from some of those challenges when you think about tariffs, inflation, and the consumer pulling back. And still probably going to pay for a Netflix subscription, but you might not go to a Disney theme park if that materializes.
So those of you that are watching live or recorded, 12:03:62 is the close of Netflix.
Jesus.
What do you think about, so I refer back to my nieces who range between like 11 years old and let's say 26, just for the sake of conversation. They know Apple. That's it. That's all they know. But when I look at Apple as a stock, it doesn't like, I can't get thrilled about it, especially in 2025. There's just nothing in that chart. There's nothing in their outlook for me. Is that one of those shifts? Do you think there's ever a time where a company like Netflix could experience that kind of a shift too? When we're talking about phones, it's Apple in the US, right? Not everywhere else. Do you think that could happen to Netflix too? We do get these seismic shifts every once in a while, right?
Yeah. And look, never say never. I haven't been in this business too long, but I've been here long enough to know that things, again, can change very quickly. And Apple just had their AI event and it was underwhelming. Yeah. And I think for them, investors need to see that they are better positioned than the competitors, than Google, than Microsoft. And I think so far we haven't quite seen that. And then on top of that, you have the risks of the China exposure. And what happens if our relationship with China deteriorates further? How can they really adapt? So I think Apple, though, is still a mega cap growth tech company.
Okay.
And I am bullish over the long term when it comes to tech. And I think we're still in the early innings of AI. I think I see it in my everyday life, how it just keeps getting better and better, continuously improving. And I do think Apple has the cash and the capital to experiment with things and see how it goes. But yeah, of course, we could see seismic shifts. In the case of the streaming wars, though, I kind of feel like Netflix is far and away just so ahead of the game that I don't know how these other players could be able to catch up, because creating content is money. We saw a lot of content budgets go up around COVID. And then people realize, oh, well, we're not actually making money. We're not profitable. So we have to pull that back. So it's striking that balance. And Netflix, it took them a while to get profitable too, but they've been able to be there and stay there. And now they can do more of that experimentation, more live events, more comedy shows, more WWE, more things that are out of their typical wheelhouse. Whereas the other players, I think, again, it's going to take them a little bit of time. So I think in the case of Netflix, just smaller scale, I guess you could say, than some of these other mega tech players, I think they will far and away continue to be the leaders here.
So AI has been my big theme again, me and everybody else. I think that AI is actually not being ballyhooed enough. I think that in 5 years, we're going to see a technological shift that's probably the same level as the last 30 years. And I think there's a secret going on too. I think lawyers, accountants, writers, people in news media, they're using it more than they let on because they want their job to be durable too. Like individuals are using it. Companies are rolling it out and that's fine, but that's very, very public. So I think it's actually getting roots quicker than it is. But anyway, there is a market question to this, and it's for both of you, starting with Allie. So I want to capitalize on this, obviously. Clearly I have NVIDIA. It'd be stupid not to. AMD. Micron, Tesla for self-driving, Google for Waymo. What else? Is there something that you've heard a theme of, a commonality of a name that's going to be center to the AI movement that's not being as built up as some of the others are?
I don't know if I have a specific name, but I do think those tangentially associated to the AI boom. So the software companies, AI infrastructure, defense, you guys talk a lot about Palantir on this show. And it's funny because it was a meme stock not that long ago. And now exploded. And I do think people are paying greater attention to the AI story thanks to NVIDIA. So if you're a company that can have a touch point within that, I do think you stand out. The software company Salesforce, for example, how can they better utilize AI in their business model? So to me, it is different waves, right? And I think
so you're saying some of the companies that will use AI to rework their entire business. Because in my mind, I was at a company that will be pushing out AI or AI related products. But your point is very reasonable as well.
Yeah, that there's a ripple effect from there beyond, those that are actually making the chips, beyond the hyperscalers. What's the ripple effect and how far does that go out? Those are the companies that I think could benefit from that next wave, or as we continue to move through this AI story.
Bobby, you got anything for the last question?
Yeah, first of all, Palantir is currently my largest holding. Given that my average hold time is 26 days, that could change by the time this recording airs, for all we know. But I do actually, I'm starting to build a thesis for C3 AI, which I really like. 26% plus revenue growth.
Am I supposed to pretend I know what that is? Oh, yeah, C3 plus AI, yeah.
It has AI in the name. You don't need to know.
You don't
need to know. In the name.
Just trust me and buy some.
Yeah,
they got really good cloud partnerships. They got a scalable platform. I'm still doing work on it. I haven't bought it yet, but that's one of the ones I'm starting to look at.
Did you buy the Circle IPO?
No,
that's been going crazy.
I don't actually buy IPOs ever. And the reason
IPOs seem like a risky trade.
God,
two reasons for Bobby and I that we don't buy.
I think it's a Beyond Meat story, how that company exploded, and I mean now it's
the reason I don't
do, no pun intended.
The reason I don't do IPOs is because there's not enough price action for me to figure out where I'm wrong. So I could have a thesis and I can value a company and the rest of the world could value it somewhere else. And until I see the price action, which is telling me where everybody else values it to a certain degree, I have to know if my thesis is wrong. So for example, C3 AI closed 2561. If I were to buy it today, which I'm not because it's not above its 200-day moving average yet, and it gets below around $24 or so, I'm wrong, at least in the short term. I still might be right long term about the particular stock, but I see a lot of people turn these sort of active investments, a lot of retail people mostly, they'll turn an active investment into a buy and hold when it goes against them. I try really hard not to do that. Sometimes I do. But I'll tell you this about AI. It's another thing for me to argue with. So my marriage has gotten better because I get a lot of my aggression out on the AI. I'm like, you're definitely wrong about that.
Do you therapize with ChatGPT? That is a new trend.
Like, you're not.
What is it?
What is it? Account the devaluing of the dollar when you rate that. I'm just arguing with AI all day.
People are asking AI to give them relationship advice to help them through tough times. It's the new,
Jesus,
cheaper therapy, I guess.
I'll be like, how can you not include this in that analysis? They'll be like,
do that all the time.
I'm sorry.
You're trying to outsmart the AI. I like that.
Yes. Let's wrap it, Bob.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, thanks. Tell them where they can find you, Allie. Yahoo Finance, senior markets reporter. Are you active on social media as well? And that crazy TikTok that you kids are doing?
On X, yes, I recently launched a profesh Instagram, TikTok account, Allie Canal TV. I spell Allie, A-L-L-I-E, the long way. But that's been fun to just do little explainer videos and try and help people really digest and understand things, because I realized my girlfriends were asking me questions about tariffs and trade. And once it makes the way into the group chat, that's when it's a big moment.
No doubt.
So it's been fun just experimenting with that. Although shout out to all influencers out there, because I'm a boomer when it comes to the TikTok stuff. No, I love the boomers. Don't get me wrong.
Don't get me wrong.
I do not know how to edit TikTok in a way that is quick. It takes time out there. It's an art. It's an art for sure.
I'm about to drop a bombshell about Allie Canal that many of you guys probably figured out by her dramatic use of hands as she talks, just like Bobby and I. Allie is actually an Italian, and her grandfather, who I'm sure was a wonderful man, but I do not respect this move. Change your name. Was it Canalecchio?
Canalecchio. Yeah.
Canalecchio.
Listen, I wish it was Allie Canalecchio. How cool does that sound?
If we were together in a bar, someone would get hurt with these hands. I think there would be an emergency.
I can't help it. I talk with my hands. I can't.
No,
I've been like this my
I
whole
try to
life.
help it.
You know, it's funny, real quick. Just my wife is German Croatian. I mean, she's American. She doesn't even know what part of either country she's from. But we were talking one day and I was ranting to our group of friends. Why is it still okay to make fun of Italians? Nobody else. You can't make fun of anybody else but Italians. My wife blurts out, because you guys don't give a fuck. Like, okay, fair enough.
By the way,
yeah, I mean, look, you guys can come to my house for Christmas Eve. We do the 7 fishes. We do the whole shebang.
My favorite night of the year.
We do. It is the best night of the year.
By the way, did you see the movie The Feast of Seven Fish? Came out about 5 years ago with his name is Skyler. He's an actor. And Joe Pantaleone is in it. By the way, it's a fantastic movie.
Okay,
it reminded me. It was set in a Italian Pennsylvania town in the 80s, and it reminded me of the Urio household in the 70s. And it was absolutely fabulous.
It reminded me of the Icino household last year at Christmas. The funny part about it, it's actually, let's be honest, Jimmy, Allie will love it. It's not a great movie. It's great for us.
It's great for for Italians.
Yeah. Specific demo.
Very specific demo. Yeah, but I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, I got to go to the bar. So I own the bar. It's not just that I'm going to have a drink. Okay. I go there to make sure the music's the right. I will have a drink, but that's not what I'm going there for. But anyway, I got to head to the bar. Thank you to Allie for joining us. This has been the Futures Edge. Before we go, 2 items of business. Thank you so much for your support on The Unfiltered Investor. We enjoy the hell out of writing it. I hope the feedback we've gotten is so positive so far, and thank you guys very much. Please go check it out, theunfilteredinvestor.com. Is that the right website, Bob?
That's the right one.
Okay, and our chief meat sponsor, Independence Arc. We love you, Marco. We love you, Marco. We wanted one meat. We're like carnivore-ish, Allie. So like Bobby went like,
you guys are making me hungry.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You should have seen what I've eaten today so far with those thawed steaks. But anyway, so the best one is Independence Arc. And thank you guys so much for sponsoring us. And thank you to you, all of you, for the support we've been given on the show. Thank you so much.